Welcome back, because it's good to be back. Well, really quick, let's jump into what was left over from the last video, as always. The big BDSP Poffin Smoothness mystery. So, I was made aware of an analysis on the French website PokéBip that breaks it down as such. For all of the combined friendship on your team, you get 1, 2, or 3 points down on your Poffin. Then, for each Pokemon with max friendship, you get another point off. So that's it! Mystery solved. Except, no, that clearly isn't the case. Almost all of my trials from the last video disproved this. By this breakdown, the 5 Torterra would have had a reduction of 8 points, and the 6 Vaporeon would have reduced it by 3. However, look at this comment. It basically reverses PokéBip's claim, with the idea that you get up to 6 points off for the combined totals of friendship, with another point off for every 2 Pokemon with max friendship. This theory lines up with my results. It's similar to PokéBip's breakdown, and I want to believe that their analysis didn't just come out of nowhere. And all of this also explains the 3 variables I'd seen. If there are 2 separate scores for teamwork, which is likely the combined total, and Nakayoshi, which means close friend and likely refers to the max friendship Pokemon have, then it all kind of makes sense. They also weren't the only person to come to this conclusion, so I'm willing to accept this hypothesis for now, and feel just a little bit of closure. Well, I'd love to sit here and Q&A every comment I get, but there comes a time when one must leave the past as the past and keep moving forward. And with that said, Generation 6. Where there are, honestly, quite a few things we could talk about. Even if we just narrow it down to things that involve berries and their stats, there are at least 2 others I could be mentioning right now. But I've chosen one that doesn't involve berries at all. Let's continue our gastronomic tour of the Pokemon world with the next stop on our list. Kalos's Pokepuffs. POKéMON-AMIE is centered around one goal. Manage these values and fill in this gauge. The values here all go up to 255, there's a Pokemon that evolves after you fill it in a little, this is the fullness meter, and oh god, it's Pokeblocks all over again! Okay, let's back up a bit. As you might recall, we've briefly mentioned POKéMON-AMIE before, but that was nothing more than a, hey, remember that the affection system exists? This time, we're gonna dive into all of the granular details, and it's gonna primarily center around Pokepuffs so that we have a bit of an anchor point to describe the mechanics here. Received from playing minigames or given by visitors, you give your Pokemon Pokepuffs so that you can raise their affection stat, represented in-game as 5 hearts. Feed 2 mini Pokepuffs and your Pokemon will get full, but don't worry, this is part of the gameplay loop this time, as you must now play minigames and pet them to lower their fullness and start again. That is at least how it appears on the surface, but of course, we will get to the details when we get to them. It's always good to start from that place of, how do the casual players interact with the system? So let's get a full overview of POKéMON-AMIE and the affection stat from said casual perspective. Once you get the Pokédex in Pokemon X and Y, and the Pokénav in ORAS, you unlock POKéMON-AMIE, a system that lets you interact with Pokemon on a personal level. A ton of work was put into this system, as every single species has unique interactions, animations, and rules for how you interact with them. As you interact with your Pokemon through this little game within the game, they begin to exhibit new behaviors in battle, from less mechanical and more emotional text in the battle narration, to outright new passive abilities, such as an increased critical hit rate, and an ability to just straight up defy mechanics and survive attacks that were meant to KO them. And it all stems from this little meter right here. 5 hearts labeled Affection. The more hearts you earn, the greater the effects you unlock. Hell, let's go over the effects. Yes, right now. At 1 heart, you get nothing! I'm gonna tell you the thresholds for each heart right now, and you'll see why. Right away, 0 hearts means you have no affection, and 5 hearts means you've maxed out at 255 affection. 2, 3, and 4 hearts are at multiples of 50, which means that you'll get your first 4 at a fairly consistent pace, and then suddenly stall as you wait for about twice as long to finally hit the max. That leaves 1 heart, and you get your first heart at 1 point. It is little more than a check to say whether or not you've used POKéMON-AMIE with this Pokemon before. So, starting at 2 hearts, I'm just going to throw this out here. This is when Eevee evolves. As a failsafe, they require Eevee to know a Fairy-type move, so you can still opt out of Sylveon. You can't go back on Affection once you've earned it. But otherwise, you'll get a Sylveon as soon as you level up, once you have 2 hearts. So, Eevee aside, from this point on, your Pokemon gets a little shake animation when they come out into battle, and they get some new battle narration as well. Also from this point onwards, the Pokemon will get a multiplier to their battle experience, and it works the same way as traded Pokemon. That's even a separate multiplier, which is split between the normal 1.5 times bonus for being traded, and, starting in Gen 4, the special 1.7 times bonus if the Pokemon is from a game in another language. You can get over double the normal experience if you have both of these multipliers. It's a great way to get the Experience Millionaire medal. Oh, wait.
The what?
We can't get into that right now. At 3 hearts, the Pokemon will bounce when entering battle, and they'll get even more new narration. This is also where you gain a 10% chance to survive all attacks with 1 HP. It's gotta be an attack on the Pokemon, so that doesn't include things like recoil damage or damage over time, but it does include the self-inflicted attacks from confusion. I hope you know the pain I went through to get footage of that for the record. At 4 hearts, we get our final change to the battle flavor. The Pokemon will now just glance back at you when they enter battle, and I'll be honest, I'm glad this is the final animation. It just feels good when they give you the knowing look. They'll also give you the look when you catch Pokemon. For passives, the Endure chance has been bumped up from 10% to 15%, and you've now got a 20% chance at the end of every turn to shake off a non-volatile status condition. You know, burn, poison, sleep, freeze, paralysis. Now then, we need to have a talk. Pull up the Bulbapedia screenshot. Let's see it. Right here, they tell you that, starting at 4 hearts, you can avoid attacks by taking 10% off of their accuracy stats. Think Bright Powder, Lax Incense. So I went to record this and found a Mothim with Bone Rush, Brick Break, Brine, and Hyper Beam. I thought, oh, perfect. 4 attacks, all with perfect to near perfect accuracy, I just gotta sit here and stall until the thing procs. I then sat there for nearly 40 turns without seeing it once. I went and checked again and saw that there is confirmation you do get special dialogue when this happens. I genuinely thought to myself at this point, oh my god, what if this Mothim has no guard? That would be insane, but it would explain my luck. It's hit all of its hyper beams. I don't even know if I saw it miss a Bone Rush. I thought I did.
Okay, wait. What is going on right now? How are we getting all these crazy encounters?
All of my footage is recorded in Pokemon randomizers.
Oh.
So anyway, I caught the Mothim to check. And you know what it had? Color change. So I went back and tried again, and recorded an even longer battle. And it still didn't happen. So here's where I said, well hold on. Earlier in the article, they mentioned something interesting. At 200 affection, just about halfway between 4 and 5 hearts, the Endure chance goes up to 20%. It's basically an invisible checkpoint that gives you more benefits, even though the POKéMON-AMIE screen doesn't show 4.5 hearts. What if that's when the evasion bonus kicks in? So I came back when I was at 200 affection. Even though the game won't tell me, I can still check with PK Hex. I got into another battle and it happened damn near immediately. In fact, it was so immediate that I forgot to hit the record button, and I needed to wait around in the battle to trigger another one. I looked around on a lot of websites, and I couldn't find anyone mentioning this. I even made sure to check some foreign sites like PokéBip and PokéViki, but neither of them mentioned it. If you know of anywhere online that this is mentioned, please do tell. But in the meantime, we'll just have to chalk this one up to anecdotal evidence. Well, that segues perfectly into mentioning the 4.5 heart bonuses. You know, what's interesting is that the minigames we're going to mention later are scored on a scale of 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, and 5 stars, and that basically extends to the affection system itself. It even makes a lot of sense, since instead of the jump from 150 to 255 affection mentioned earlier, there's now a more even line from 150 to 200, then 255. However, unlike the minigames, there's no half-heart graphic to tease you with an almost there state. Honestly, it almost feels like an oversight. Anyway, as mentioned, I never got the evasion chance to proc until I hit this point, and multiple websites mention that the endurance chance goes up from 15% to 20% at this point too. But finally, at 5 hearts, we bump the endurance to a 25% chance, and all critical hit rates are doubled. You also have the opportunity to pet Pokemon after a battle by touching the bottom screen before the last fainting animation finishes, unless they're asleep. From here, you're eligible to receive the Best Friends ribbon, either at Prism Tower or Mauville Hills. Also, Pokeblocks in Oras gain heightened effects as your affection goes up. I've left out the details. If you want the specifics on that, you'll just have to go check out the Pokeblock deep dive. I'd also like to mention that Mega Evolved Pokemon do not get to use their affection passives. Given the lore on Mega Evolution, I'm gonna have to give that a huge "that tracks." Well, we know how to access POKéMON-AMIE, and we know what our benefits will be after we use it. One might say I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but come on, we know what we're here for. So let's fill in that little middle step. Let's dive into the inner workings of POKéMON-AMIE. The first and foremost important aspect of POKéMON-AMIE, and what forms the core of the gameplay loop, as mentioned, is the PokéPuff. Feed one to your Pokemon, and that coveted affection stat goes up. While not the only thing that raises affection, PokéPuffs are the most consistently large source of affection, and just about everything you do revolves around either getting them or feeding them. Let's take a look. As can be seen while scrolling through the PokéPuffs, they come in different types. There are 5 colors of PokéPuff, and what's fun is that they all have names. This is Sweet, Mint, Citrus, Mocha, and Spice. Each of these come in 4 tiers. Basic, Frosted with a little dollop of frosting, Fancy with a little accoutrement on top, and Deluxe with both. Now, would you believe that the different flavors are actually just there for flavor? I've spent many a time thinking things like, this Pokemon is green, I must give them the green PokéPuff. But truthfully, it's only the tiers that matter. They give 2, 3, 4, or 5 points of affection each. Naturally, the next thing you would expect is to add another column here for how many points of fullness they give, but it's actually not that simple. What I'm about to mention is going to be completely disregarded as soon as I finish this section, so don't take it to heart too much, but we'll go over it anyway. PokéPuffs are eaten in bites, and you personally have to hold the PokéPuff up to their face, or mouth, rather, while they eat it. Every species has an eating speed, and it will take them either 5, 3, or 2 bites to fully eat a PokéPuff, and you are totally capable of just dropping it while they are in the middle of eating. As such, even though affection is only granted when the PokéPuff is fully eaten, the fullness stat will increase with each bite. 5-bite Pokemon get 10 points per bite, 3-bite Pokemon are 16 points each, and 2 bites are 24 points. Now for that disregarding. Generally, these numbers don't actually matter, because you always want to eat the full PokéPuff. You don't get anything if you only half eat a PokéPuff. And, when you do fully eat a PokéPuff, all of that is completely ignored, and the Pokemon's fullness is just raised by 50 points. All of those bite numbers only come into play if you didn't fully eat the puff. It's strange then that 2-bite Pokemon get 24 points from a single bite rather than 25, but again, it's largely irrelevant. Like I said, whether you're a 5, 3, or 2-bite Pokemon is species dependent, and thus I'd like to mention one special list of exceptions. the 7 species that cannot eat Pokepuffs at all. In National Dex order, they are Metapod, Kakuna, Pineco, Silcoon, Cascoon, and Spupa. This is the weirdest, most arbitrary list I've ever seen. There's a clear bias towards cocoon Pokemon here, and so I assume they're going for being in a cocoon means you can't eat. And they also seem to be splitting it so that no one fully evolved is here. But they didn't even get every cocoon Pokemon. It's like they got up to Gen 3 and said, okay, never mind, I'm good. Oh wait, but they're all in the one we just made. What about Shelgon? Okay, maybe he can eat through the little hole. What about Pupitar? Maybe they were only looking at bug types and Pupitar slipped through the cracks. Well then what about Whirlipede? And why is Pineco here? That's not a cocoon, that's a bagworm. Well, okay, it's kind of a cocoon, and I guess they didn't want to put Forretress here because Forretress is fully evolved, and if both Pineco and Forretress were here, that would mean you'd never be able to easily raise its affection. Even though they didn't put the other bagworm, Burmy, here. But okay, I guess Burmy's got an exposed mouth, even though it shouldn't even matter anyway, because bagworms in general eat so much. There are pest controls that specialize in bagworms, because they just eat everything. Oh, but I guess they stop eating once they grow up and go in the cocoon, so only Forretress and Wormadam should be here. Oh, but again, they don't want to put fully evolved Pokemon here. Except I've been lying to you the whole time! I said there were 7 species, and I only listed 6 of them. Oh, no, you get back here. Don't try to delete your comment now, it's too late. The last Pokemon is Shedinja. If you didn't do all the Pokéblock feeding... Oh my god. I really wrote that, huh? Maybe it is time I laid off the Pokéblock. The last Pokemon is Shedinja. If you didn't do all the Pokepuff feeding you wanted to as a Nincada, you're screwed. And yes, affection does carry over to Shedinja. Was the 25% chance of surviving a hit just too powerful for Shedinja? Well, this started out as a deep dive on Pokepuffs, and now I'm reading about the behavior and life cycle of bagworms. Wait, you're telling me Roggenrola can eat Pokepuffs? That's an ear! So, as mentioned, Pokepuffs come from 2 sources, the POKéMON-AMIE minigames and the visitors. Minigames up first. I want to say that they're pretty straightforward, but there's a snag here. This guy right here, another game called Making Faces. It's tenuous whether or not this should be in the same category as the others, but there are certain things that are easier to explain if Making Faces is considered a minigame, and 40 others that are way worse to explain if we try to lump this one in. So let's talk about what the hell this game even is first, and help it gain some distance from the other minigames. While sitting on the main screen, the 3DS's camera is active. Built into Pokemon X and Y is a facial recognition system, and if that's triggered, this smiley face shows up in the corner of the screen.
This means that the game has detected your face.
If the game detects you having made faces or tilted your head 3 times, your Pokemon will then request you to make different faces. No idea how these are being communicated to you in-universe, but, well... Complete 5 of these and you complete the minigame. The effects of doing this will be saved for later, but I can tell you one thing you don't get. Pokepuffs. Still, it's worth knowing what Making Faces is. So, we finish up with that, and we can head to the minigame menu, where you'll see 3 games: Tile Puzzle, Berry Picker, and Head It. Each of these has 4 difficulties, and a high score recorded in the form of a 5-star ranking system. Now, look, if I were to break down every single minigame here, it would take a lot of work, a ton of extra recording, and we'd be spending so much time breaking down the granular differences between the 12 separate difficulties here, that I honestly feel like it would be totally permissible to just give you the "it's not that important" treatment here, and move on. Tile Puzzle! The game constructs a variety of scenes using 3 Pokemon from your party. How do they pick which Pokemon? We'll cover that after this. Your goal is to complete a puzzle jigsaw style as quickly as you can. The trick, however, is that all the pieces are already in the puzzle, and you have to swap them around with each other. An easy puzzle is 5x4, normal is 6x5, and hard is 8x6. When all the pieces are in the correct location, the game is over, and you're ranked based on time. Easy scores start at 1 minute, Anything over 1 minute is 0 stars, all the way down to 15 seconds, which gives you 5 stars. Rewards are purely based on your star ranking, so I'll put those in the table too. The fourth difficulty that every minigame has is Unlimited, which is an endless mode with separate scoring. Tile Puzzles Unlimited mode starts you with solving an easy puzzle and, upon beating it, swaps you to a normal puzzle, which leads to a hard one after that, and then back to easy. You start with 30 seconds. For every piece you slot in correctly, you earn 1 point, and for every 2 pieces that you slot in correctly, you earn 1 second back on the clock. Every time you complete a puzzle, you earn a point bonus and a time bonus, which are calculated as such. Points are awarded based on what kind of puzzle it was and how many times you completed that level, so we'll sort the variables as easy clears, normal clears, and hard clears. Easy puzzles are 80 points times the number of its clears, normal puzzles give 100 points times normal clears, and hard is 200 times hard clears. To put it into practice, first we'll ignore the score you get for putting tiles into the correct place and just focus on this puzzle complete bonus. The first 3 puzzles you complete will award 80, 100, and 200 points. The fourth one is your second easy clear, so it awards 160 points, and then you get 200 and 400, and it continues to scale up from there. The time bonus is awarded based on how many puzzles you've cleared total. It's 30 seconds minus the number of puzzles, but this means that the first bonus is 29 seconds, which I suppose makes sense given the game starts with 30 on the clock. Puzzle 2 grants 28 seconds, 3 is 27, and the minimum bonus is 5 seconds. Once you hit 25 puzzles, this is all you'll ever get. The in-game score maxes out at 49,999 points. Because the scoring is so mathematically consistent, I can just tell you that it takes 47 puzzles to hit this. However, the game will still continue to record how many puzzles you've beaten. Now for scoring. The point thresholds for Tile Puzzles Unlimited mode are... not real! All that shit we just talked about is completely out of the window! The star rating is purely just based on how many puzzles you've completed. Lastly, every minigame grants you titles to mark your progression, so to speak. Each difficulty has 2 titles, one for clearing said difficulty and one for getting 5 stars on it. So, every minigame has 8 titles. Here are tile puzzles. Berry Picker. 60 seconds on the clock. 3 of your Pokemon will variously jump up and request a berry from the tree in the center. Using the stylus, drag to them the berry they desire. They'll give you 3 seconds. If you make your Pokemon wait too long, or if you give them the wrong berry, they'll leave, and you'll have to wait for them to return. For every 10 berries you correctly deliver, you'll be shown your current score. After 10 requests, Pokemon will begin to show up 2 at a time, and after 15 more requests, they'll show up 3 at a time until the end of the minigame. 2 Pokemon will never concurrently ask for the same berry, and the Pokemon will be happier the faster you deliver the berry. The easy difficulty features the Raz, Bluck, and Pinap berries. Man, this was supposed to be the video that didn't feature berries. Normal adds Weeper and Magost, and Hard adds Durin and Nomel. Hard also adds a special feature where the 3-second leeway each Pokemon gives you will gradually drop to a 2-second wait, until you reach the 3 at a time portion, at which point they'll go back to the 3-second wait. Now throw most of that out of the window for Unlimited mode. No timer at all, just a 3-strike system based on whether or not a Pokemon had its request fulfilled when it leaves the screen. Unlimited has normal mode's 5 berry selection, but the 1, 2, or 3 at a time rotation is now done in cycles. It's 5 berries to progress to 2 at a time, 10 to hit 3 at a time, and then 15 to go back to the start. From there, it's another 5, 10, 15 berries, and then we start again, but this time it's 5, 15, and 30 berries. Reach the 4th cycle, which is 110 berries in, and the patterns start getting erratic, and the berry patience drops to about a second. This only happens starting from the 4th cycle though. Now the ranking tables. No score, just a number of berries given for all 4 difficulties. Here are the 8 titles given for clearing and 5-starring the difficulties as well. Lastly, it's Head It. Once again, you've got 60 seconds. Balls of yarn fall past your Pokemon's heads, and you tap them to headbutt them back up. Stars above your Pokemon mark the exact timing with which you're meant to hit the yarn balls, and if you're slightly off, you'll hit them early or late. Correct timing gets you 3 points, early and late hits get you 1 point. On hard, the stars are removed, and in all difficulties, the score maxes out at 999. The game takes place in 3 phases, split by 3 20-second periods. In Phase 1, the game will drop pink yarn balls on your main Pokemon. In Phase 2, a second Pokemon will join and you'll get yellow yarn balls. In Phase 3, they'll drop blue balls on 3 of your Pokemon. Let me say that again. They will drop blue balls all over 3 of your Pokemon for the last 20 seconds. There are 2 special drops that can happen, a fast purple ball and a loose ball of yarn that floats down slowly. The loose ball will simply be whatever color is currently falling. As you maintain a combo, the time between each yarn ball gets shorter and shorter until you hit a new phase, at which point it resets. The minimum time between each ball of yarn decreases as the difficulties rise. However, for every 10 hits in a combo, you get a 10-point bonus. Unless it was a multiple of 50, in which case you get a 50-point bonus. Unless that was a multiple of 100, in which case you get a 100-point bonus. When the timer hits 0, a giant ball of yarn is dropped on the main Pokemon, and you cannot hit this one early. Hitting it spot on will get you 50 points, but hitting it late will only grant 10. For the unlimited difficulty, once again the 60-second timer is dropped in favor of a 3-strike rule. Instead of the 20 seconds, the phases progress with variable times, but they remain in the order of pink, yellow, blue, which is significant because blue is always faster than the corresponding pink and yellow balls which fell before. As mentioned before, maintaining a combo reduces the time between each yarn ball until you hit a new phase, but the minimum time is actually random for every pink, yellow, blue loop you do on Unlimited. Sometimes it speeds up, sometimes you stay pretty slow. That would be it for Head It, but there's one very important aspect. Fever! After the first hit on Easy and the third consecutive hit on every other difficulty, a rainbow appears in the background. Continue your combo and the rainbow will get bigger and bigger. It takes 5 hits on Easy and 15 elsewise, but once you hit this number, the rainbow and the game say Fever, and every subsequent hit in your combo will earn double points. Miss a ball though, and both your combo and the Fever rainbow reset back to 0. This time around, score is real because it plays into the thresholds for the star ratings. And finally, the last 8 titles. Whew. Okay. So, after every minigame, you're given a selection of Poké Puffs of random flavors. Or so it would seem. The puffs I put in the tables were actually not just representative of what you get, those are literally what you will receive every single time. If you'd like a specific kind of puff for any reason, you've got to seek out the exact game, difficulty, and score to get it. That said, the tier of Poké Puff you earn is generally matched up by the difficulty you play. Easy will get you basic puffs, normal gets you frosted ones, hard gives fancy, and unlimited gives deluxe. Generally speaking, upon getting 4.5 or 5 stars, you essentially get to take puffs from the next level up. While we're on the topic of scores, I do want to say that, because of the way Tile Puzzle works, its rewards are laid out differently from the others. Given that you have to complete a puzzle before Tile Puzzle ends, but the game itself is overall easier and requires little reaction time, Tile Puzzle rewards better at lower scores, but worse at higher scores. Meanwhile, the other two can be cleared by literally doing nothing, so a 0-star score in those games always results in a single, basic, sweet Poké Puff, while a 5-star game will always result in 6 Poké Puffs, no matter the difficulty. Tile Puzzle, meanwhile, doesn't hit 6 puffs until 4 stars on unlimited difficulty. Now, technically, that means you can game the system by loading up Tile Puzzle's Unlimited mode and collecting a free Fancy Puff and a Frosted Puff every 30 seconds without doing anything. Though, you'd need a good excuse for being nearly 0 effort here, because you're better off loading up Berry Picker and Head It for about 5 seconds and grabbing 2 Deluxe Puffs for your troubles. But, if doing well lets you get a Poké Puff from the tier above, what about doing really well in an Unlimited game? If you've got a keen eye, or if you've just played this game before, then you'll have noticed that there is indeed something special. If you can earn 5 stars on any of the Unlimited games, then enter the 5th tier, Supreme Seasonal Poké Puffs. Coming in 4 variants separate from the prior flavors, they're the Summer, Autumn, Winter, and Spring Poké Puffs. Because Poké Puff rewards are predetermined, as previously discussed, you've got to play specific minigames to get them all. Supreme Summer is earned from Head It, Supreme Autumn comes from Berry Picker, Supreme Winter comes from Tile Puzzle, and Supreme Spring... Well, there's only 3 minigames, so... No. So they just didn't limit Supreme Spring. You'll get it after 5-starring any of the unlimited games. Every puff in the Supreme Seasonal Collection gives +6 in affection. Well, with all that out of the way, we finally covered one of the 2 sources of Poké Puffs. Well, let's talk about visitors. Visitors are pooled based on all of the Pokemon owned by all of the players in the Friends, Acquaintances, and Passerby sections of the PSS. Just from observation, the game generally tries to select Pokemon with raised affection if possible, and it will show the affection stats on said visitors. Players are able to set out Pokepuffs of their own in their POKéMON-AMIE space to entice visitors and enhance the rewards from their stays. As they walk by, they make a decision on whether or not to stay based on what's on offer. These numbers here come from Bulbapedia's editors and the immense amount of observational research they did back in 2014. There's no decomp for X and Y presently, I'm afraid, so these estimations presently are vital. Pokepuffs can also last through multiple groups of visitors, which is what this column labeled number of groups is for. With no Pokepuffs, each passerby simply has a 50-50 chance to sit down and stay, and that goes up to a guaranteed chance with a Supreme Pokepuff. Once 3 visitors sit down, they'll have a conversation and either give you a Pokepuff or a decoration for your POKéMON-AMIE screen. The decorations come in sets, and the higher the affection of the visitors, the higher chance that you'll get a decoration from a higher tier of item sets or a better Pokepuff. When you set out a Pokepuff, you'll be guaranteed a certain minimum tier of rewards. You're probably waiting for me to reveal that last item on this list, so let's talk about the Pokepuffs that come from visitors. After a trip, visitors can hand you basic, frosted, fancy, and deluxe puffs, which isn't too bad given that puffs last for multiple groups at a time, so you're pretty much always getting some kind of return on investment. But now, for the final tier of puffs, which come after 2 special events. Anytime you enter the Hall of Fame, visitors will commemorate that by making a Supreme Honor Pokepuff, and if it's your birthday as set by the 3DS, they will make the Supreme Wish Pokepuff. Both of these give +10 in affection, last for 7 groups of visitors, and guarantee those visitors to give, at minimum, a decoration from Item Set D or a Deluxe Pokepuff in return. You can predict what you'll receive based on the conversation that ensues between the visitors, and there are 2 special conditions that visitor groups can meet to change the reward outcome. If everyone is from the same evolutionary family, you'll receive a completely random item, unrestricted by the Pokepuff you have out. A bit of a double-edged mechanic, since having access to the entire selection of items means you could potentially get something really good, but if you already set out a big Pokepuff specifically with the hopes to limit your selection, this could be a bit of a setback. If all the visitors share a type, and aren't from the same family, then they'll pick from a special 7-item set based on what said type is. Each type has their own set of a wallpaper, 4 cushions, and 2 object decorations. If everyone here shares 2 types, then the set chosen will be the first type of the first Pokemon. That's this one in the bottom right, who will be credited first when the gift is received. That's just about everything for visitors. Alright, well, I know the order in which this whole breakdown has been done so far has been a little eclectic. I hope you'll forgive, but that means we can finally close out with the fullness and enjoyment stats. It is here I'll remind you once again that affection, fullness, and enjoyment all max out at 255. We'll start with enjoyment, because it's really simple and almost has nothing to do with Pokepuffs. It's largely connected to petting. While Pokepuffs are the main source of affection, petting is definitely the easiest, because it's quick and requires no resources. No resources except for the enjoyment stat. So, really quickly, Pokemon can have 3 types of petting spots: normal, favored, and disliked, and not every species has the latter 2. For petting a disliked spot, you lose 20 points of enjoyment and you get nothing except an admonishment. You could also just hit them, which similarly loses you 5 points of enjoyment. For petting a normal spot, they'll gain between 1 and 3 points of affection, depending on how high your enjoyment is, and then you will lose points in enjoyment accordingly. So basically, at high enjoyment, you get high returns, but a fast drain on points. So there's like a curve as your Pokemon winds down and gets tired of petting. Unfortunately, it's not a very slow curve, as you basically will have the max bonus until right at the end where you get one more pet. I should mention that doing anything below the minimum enjoyment here does nothing, and the way the math works out, you really just get a few pets with the best amount, and then you run out. If you pet a Pokemon in their favored spot, the curve is a little more favorable, draining slightly slower, and it grants 3 points every time, until you're just about to run out of points. If you're starting from 255 enjoyment, the points drain quick enough that if you're petting with normal spots, you'll get to pet them 5 times and get 15 affection overall. And if you do favored spots, you'll pet them 6 times and get 18 affection overall. But here's a weird one. You can also gain enjoyment by what I assume is meant to be talking to them, but it's kind of just a random event triggered by sounds in the 3DS mic. Anything from deliberate speech to just the sound of the stylus on the touchscreen can activate this. Also, there's points for giving them a high five, just opening up the play mode, and there's points just for opening a minigame, up to and including the Making Faces game, but you only get that one once per game session, like from loading your save file. Lastly, walking around with them in the party has 2 effects. Every 50 steps, you'll gain 1 point in enjoyment, but only if you're below 70, and there's another point that goes to dropping your fullness as well. This is a perfect time to transition into the fullness stat. For starters on this one, Pokemon will eat Pokepuffs differently as they hit certain strangely specific thresholds. I'll put extra thresholds here to represent multiples of 50, since those are the numbers you'll hit if you're starting at 0 fullness and only eating full Pokepuffs. Oh, and for the record, these are how full your Pokemon was when they started eating this Pokepuff, so you don't have to worry about the partial bite numbers we talked about earlier. In this first range, they'll eat pretty quick, taking all 2, 3, or 5 of their bites in rapid succession. In the next range, or if this is your 5th puff from empty, the Pokemon will slow down once they're about to take their 3rd or 4th bite. What about Pokemon who eat in 2 bites? They don't slow down at all in this range. They eat at the same speed as before. But once you're over 213, every bite will be made slowly. This always lets you know that that was your last Pokepuff, except in the rare case where you happen to feed them while they were between 205 and 213. Then they'd have filled up without ever hitting this threshold. Now, with fullness functioning as the final factor in POKéMON-AMIE's gameplay loop, which stands in stark contrast to Pokéblock's one-and-done nature, minigames are what close that loop, so to speak, because every time you complete a game of Head It, Tile Puzzle, or Berry Picker, you drop fullness by 110 points. You'll also gain 80 points of enjoyment, unless you were playing Tile Puzzle on Easy or Normal, then you only get 30 points of enjoyment. Like I said, Tile Puzzle gets a different balance because of the way it works. In fact, that's mostly everything about the fullness stat, so let's take that Tile Puzzle thing as an opportunity to mention another important factor regarding Pokepuffs: the inventory limit. To my knowledge, the game does not disclose this, but the Pokepuff menu here only has enough spots to hold 100 puffs. Get any more, and they'll delete the ones at the top of your inventory, basically cycling out your oldest ones to make room for the new ones. What this means is that playing easy minigames to try and shortcut the fullness system will result in you filling up the middle of your inventory with a bunch of mediocre basic and frosted puffs, which are going to wind up overriding your good ones if you don't keep an eye on your inventory. It is so easy to grind these minigames that it's very easy to fill up, and the more random bunches of basic puffs you have in there, the more annoying it is to try and manage, unless you're committed to throwing them away constantly. Thus, those easy tile puzzles are a quick way to drop your fullness, but you'll get awful returns on Pokepuffs, so don't do this unless you're fine with burning a bunch of inventory. You're better off loading up unlimited Head It or Berry Picker, and either instantly failing, which just gives you a single basic puff, or at least playing to 1 or 2 stars, which is fast and always gives deluxe puffs. Unless, of course, you're part of the tile puzzle speedrunning scene that I just learned the existence of. If you're busting these out, then you can do whatever you want. Also, shoutouts to this video description. But remember how all the minigames involve 3 Pokemon? Let's finally follow up on that. The two partners you get here will always be the two Pokemon in your party with the least enjoyment, with ties broken by party order. The bonuses to enjoyment and fullness also apply to every Pokemon that participated, so it's not just cosmetic. Okay, yes, I know exactly what you're thinking. What if you don't have any Pokemon in your party? Full transparency here, I was expecting something like, they pull from the PC, and then I was gonna have to answer the question of, what if you literally have a single Pokemon in your entire game? And I was fully prepared to load up a brand new save file and speedrun the opening of the game just to test this. Only for the game to hit me with this. So, yeah, you have to have 3 Pokemon in your party in order to play minigames at all. Anyway, all that only applies to the main 3 minigames. For completing a round of making faces, you'll get 80 points of enjoyment, drop your fullness by 50, and gain 8 points of affection. As far as I know, that's everything in POKéMON-AMIE, short of reviewing the entire gallery of decorations. Well, no. Let's round this video out by talking about the changes to affection, fullness, and enjoyment that happen outside of POKéMON-AMIE. Entering a battle with the Pokemon currently selected in POKéMON-AMIE will raise their enjoyment by 5 and lower their fullness by 10. Staying at Hotel Richisime will give 30 points to your entire team, but will automatically max out all of their fullness stats. And the final affection change in Gen 6, bringing everything back full circle, participating in a contest in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire gives 20 points of affection. But this is only if you're that Pokemon's original trainer. This was, apparently, discovered by TwitchPlaysPokémon of all things. During their playthrough of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they'd noticed that they were getting affection benefits in battle, despite never using POKéMON-AMIE. That's when it was discovered participating in contests was the missing key. So yes, in this insanely roundabout, impossibly tenuous way, even this is somehow connected to Pokéblocks. Well, we find ourselves here yet again. I appreciate you being along for the ride, because there is no shortage of things in this series to break down. But yet again, it's time for your favorite part, the sequel hook. Would you believe I've got 2 this time? I've got a standard follow-up to this video, and a way bigger and more exciting project after that. Seems to be the flow of this series so far. So next time, this video's getting its own Poffin addendum with a follow-up on Alola's Pokebeans. As always, do drop a fat subscribe if you want to follow the series, because you can join me after that for my biggest project yet. Feel free to guess. I'll see you then, guys.